Hello everyone, my name is Sophia. Welcome to my channel. In the previous video, we talked about different types of yarn, and in this video, we'll figure out what kind of knitting needles there are, how to choose them, and what other knitting accessories there are. Let's start with the most necessary thing, knitting needles. They come in different shapes and sizes. The size is indicated by a number and depends on the thickness of the knitting needles. In the metric system, the thickness of a knitting needle in millimeters is equal to the number. For my US viewers, I would like to remind you that your country has its own system for indicating the thickness of knitting needles, which is different from the rest of the world. For those just starting to knit, I always advise paying attention to the recommended knitting needle size for the yarn you choose. In the future, you can decide for yourself whether you need larger or smaller knitting needles than the recommended size. For example, this label says that the recommended knitting needle size is 4, but I prefer to take knitting needles with a slightly smaller diameter, 3.5. Incorrectly selected knitting needles make knitting too dense, stiff, or conversely, too loose. In both cases, an elastic knitted fabric of medium density cannot be obtained. In the store, you can find knitting needles of different shapes. In this video, we will discuss the most basic and common of them, straight needles with a point at one end and a stopper at the other end. They are used for flat knitting, such as scarves and blankets. Circular needles are two tapered needles connected by a flexible cable. They are versatile and can be used for both flat and in the round knitting. Depending on the size of the item you are making, you can purchase circular knitting needles with a length of 40 to 150 centimeters. They are great for projects like sweaters and hats. Double-pointed needles come in sets of 5 short needles with points at both ends. They are used for knitting in the round, especially for small circumference projects like socks, sleeves, and hats. Interchangeable needles consist of needle tips that can be attached to different lengths of cables. They provide flexibility in adjusting the needle length based on the project requirements. Such knitting needles are sold in sets, and the cost of such a set can be significant. For beginners, I advise you to refrain from such a purchase for now, and if knitting gets you into it, you can hint to your loved ones that such a set of knitting needles would be a wonderful gift for the next holiday. The material from which the knitting needles are made directly affects their quality and properties. Knitting needles are made of plastic, metal, bone, wood, and bamboo. They should be light and well polished. Even the slightest roughness on knitting needles prevents the thread from sliding and complicates knitting. Personally, I prefer metal knitting needles. However, sometimes I buy bamboo ones since many airlines allow them to be brought on board. I recommend storing your knitting needles in their original packaging. This way, they won't get lost or mixed up. Also, their size is rarely indicated on the knitting needles, so you often must check the information on the packaging. But if you still need to determine the size of the knitting needles, there are special knitting needle gauge, mine with ruler. Also for knitting, you will most likely need at least one crochet hook. I advise you to buy a hook with a small diameter, for example 2.5 millimeters. Among the necessary accessories, you will also need a large needle with a wide eye of the needle. I have a plastic one. In the store, you can find a huge selection of stitch markers, from simple plastic ones to beautiful ones with rhinestones. But if you have safety pins, they can be used instead of markers. To cut the thread, you will need scissors. You can use scissors that you already have, or buy scissors specifically designed for needlework. I have scissors, which are more often used by seamstresses and tailors. To prevent the loops from slipping off the knitting needles during breaks between knitting, use loop stoppers. But if you fold the knitting carefully, then such stoppers may not be needed. Sometimes while knitting, it is necessary to remove several loops. To do this, you can use these large safety pins. Many knitters find row counters useful. They can be digital and mechanical. I'm used to making notes in a notebook and writing down knitted rows by hand, so I don't use such a device. I don't have a yarn holder either, but I also think this device is a great idea for a gift. If you make a lot of pom-poms, you may need special pom-pom making devices, but a pom-pom can also be made using a piece of cardboard. I'll show you how to do this in one of the following videos, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss it. You will definitely need a measuring tape if you want to knit something that will fit your size. Instead of a knitting ring, you can simply tie the thread around your finger for a second time. But the ring can also be a stylish accessory. After you acquire all this splendor, the question will arise, where to store it all? If you are financially able, you can buy a special organizer. I use a makeup bag to store my knitting needles and a regular thrifted basket for my yarn. That's all for today. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you found it helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.